This is TWiT.
All right, my story of the week, also known as freaking laser beams, because there's two different stories that I saw that had to do with lasers that I was kind of like interested / afraid of. I mean, the first one's just kind of fascinating to me. So part one, new research at Stanford's Computational Imagination Lab shows how, imagining lab, or imaging, there we go, Computational Imaging Lab, that was a typo, shows how a single laser beam that is shown into a room can actually see all of the objects in the room, like a single pinpoint laser beam. So basically a hole as small as a pinhole is all that's needed. Whatever is required to get that laser to kind of pop through the wall into the room, that laser shines in, it hits the wall on the opposite side, and then we think that the laser just stops there. But what happens ultimately, based on the system, that light rebounds off the wall. Photons then reflect back through the hole. On the other side of the hole is a camera. It's a single photon avalanche photo detector that's on the other side to basically receive all of those photons. And then, as you know, everything is ruled these days by algorithms. Those algorithms then parse the data. And then what is returned is essentially a rough estimate of everything that's in that room, right? That light goes in, it bounces off of all of these objects, returns that information, that photon information to this camera, and then those algorithms can process this and come up with kind of an idea, kind of a map for, the objects, the layout. The resolution isn't necessarily high. It's not like you're going to get a perfect representation of things that are in the room, but it's high enough to know roughly what those objects are. That's a person. That's a couch. that sort of stuff. And I don't know. I'm just kind of fascinated by.
Do they have a photo of what the output looks like?
Yeah, if you let's see here. This is the Gizmodo article. So the article that I read is on Gizmodo. If you scroll down a little bit, I'm trying to figure out where it is. Yeah. So this is kind of an indication. So you can see the humanoid object here, right? It comes back more looking like an angel than a humanoid object. It's also very narrow and very thin. The words, the letters KEY, you can see those kind of coming back pretty accurate. So again, they're low resolution, but I'm sure, with an algorithm, and these algorithms are improving, they're going to be able to get a better readout, better understanding of what these things actually translate into. Also, people who are talented and educated enough to know how to parse what they see. Because, you can imagine, what would this be used for? I feel like with lasers, it always seems to come back to the military, right? Military or police seeing into a room that they consider to be dangerous. They want to know what's in there before they head on in. That could be a use for this. Or the less kind of violent approach on this would be autonomous navigation systems. We've got these systems on cars traveling around, and we want them to always know more than even a human could see to be as safe as possible. So that could be a way of detecting hidden hazards that to the human eye might not be easy to detect, but to a system that can scan with these lasers and those photons bouncing around might be able to detect even easier. So that's kind of a cool application, I think. It's freaking laser beams,
Yeah, so the part that I wasn't quite clear on, it's a laser shined into a room, and then you said there's something in the room that bounces it back, or nothing else has to be inside the room itself?
My understanding is nothing else has to be in the room to bounce it back. It's essentially, the idea is that you're shining the laser in, it hits that wall. When it hits the wall, it diffuses, right? Light diffuses, spreads out.
That diffusion.
That reflects off of the other objects in the room and bounces the photons back to the camera. It's probably a very highly sensitive camera that's able to pick up on all that stuff.
Okay, so yeah, then it could be pretty. Instead of using one of those super tiny little fiber optic cameras that you slide under the door to look inside, you could just bounce a laser in there and go, oh, there are 3 people in this room. And then
right, exactly, for whatever you need it for.
Interesting.
Totally. Again, usually the military, I feel like that ends up being the easy go-to for something like this. But I hope there's better uses for this stuff than just military and police, Which, speaking of military, that leads into part 2. Now, this one is definitely I feel like we had a conversation about this maybe a couple of years ago on the show, and ultimately after doing it, realized that the article was from a few years prior and that it was inaccurate. Now it seems like it's actually not inaccurate. In the UK, they awarded contracts that are going to lead to laser cannons being fitted to tanks and warships. And from this quote, detecting, tracking, engaging, and countering unmanned aerial vehicles, UAVs. So that's kind of that's the starting point, but it's always like the starting point. It's like, okay, great. So that's where we are now. What does it lead to? The project known as Team HRSA is actually the Ministry of Defense's Joint Delivery Office for Directed Energy Weapons. So this is like an effort within the military to find these directed energy weapons and to, explore essentially the future of warfare, I suppose. The first of these lasers is going to be tested on a Royal Navy Type 23 warship. That's coming up. The lasers themselves are, they're lasers. So they're powered by electricity. There's no ammo required. You're not loading any ammunition. So I suppose there are benefits there if you're, follow, although I'm not very into following wartime stuff, but I suppose if you are on war technology and everything, that might be of interest to you. And also, by the way, like, this is not the first time that it's been pursued. In 2019, a French missile company worked with the Ministry of Defense, and they created an energy weapon called Dragonfire. In that case, the beam was so powerful it melted the mirrors that were used to actually direct the laser. So it was not a success, at least in its incarnation then. But yeah, I don't know why I picked these two. It's like I saw two stories about lasers, and
hey, it's a
12-year-old me was like, "Oh, lasers, that's cool." But it also kind of terrifies me to think of a future where lasers, being used in warfare and stuff like that. Doesn't sound fun, but this is the world.
Scooter X in the chat has shared another laser story. About Alphabet, which of course is Google's parent company, that is beaming 700 terabytes of data across nearly 5 kilometers. As part of its, I think it was originally part of its Project Loon initiative, which was to bring internet to different places. Now there is a free space optical communications device that can connect broadband links between 2 points and beam a bunch of info, basically bringing internet to places where they can't typically, run cables. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Connecting service across the Congo River. And that's about, I think my understanding is more about infrastructure than, it's not like they're beaming a laser into your window so that you have internet. This is how you get large amounts of internet from one place to another to serve a community that might not get internet otherwise. And so I would say that's a good use of lasers. Good by my own personal
positive
judgment.
Lasers. Yeah, I wonder if it affects birds that fly in between.
Yeah, I wonder, right? If they look at exactly the wrong place at the wrong time, that probably.
Or you're watching a Netflix show and then it's like, the bird makes it buffer again.
Oh, dang it! Must have been a bird. Bird in the laser
is worth 3 in the bush. Okay.